Hi, and welcome to Drawing with Steffi. It's been a while, but I wanted to come back and do some more how to draw videos for you guys. I've had a couple people make requests. One of them was for a mermaid. As usual, if you'd like to see more of my art, please check out ladycybercat.deviantart.com. And I'm also on Etsy. You can get magic wands, original art, and prints from me. Just look up the address that's listed at the bottom of the information or search for Cybercat Graphics. So let's get started. Again, I'm using a program called Paint Tool Sai. It's a really great program, but you don't have to use it. Just using a piece of paper will work just fine. One of the things you want to keep in mind is to draw lightly, especially if you are using just a normal piece of paper. I'm using a red color here just to make it easier for you guys to see. You probably don't want to use color pencil because normal color pencils don't erase, but there are color pencils out there that come in blue and red that are easy to erase, or you can just use another sheet of paper on top to do your inking or your final pencils. You can use tracing paper. There's all sorts of things you can do. But let's get started. One of the things I like to do when I'm drawing is to just use shapes to break down the basic idea of what I'm going to do. Sometimes I'll use lines to help me get an idea of the motion or the major direction of the figure. So I'm going to start here with just a circle and a little cross in the middle to represent where I want the face to be looking. And I'm going to kind of doodle it out to be a little bit more of an oval, because most human faces are fairly oval. And then I'm going to draw a little line for the neck, and then kind of a squarish shape for the torso. And again, I don't recommend drawing quite this dark when you're using a pencil on a piece of paper, but if you're using a digital program like Photoshop or GIMP, drawing hard like this is not a big deal because you can use the program to manipulate the lines. And now for the tail end, I am just kind of making a general shape. You could just make a big oval or a circle and an oval if you wanted to, but sometimes just freehanding it is fine. And I'm going to do some circles for her arms. I'm going to make this pretty simple. And then a kind of a big spoony shape here for her hair. Another circle for where I want her hand to be. Another square, kind of a triangle-y square here for her other arm. And I'm going to have her sitting on a rock, because mermaids apparently are always sitting on rocks. And then kind of a triangle here for her tail. One of the best things you can do when you're sketching is to flip your art around a couple times. That really helps make sure you get rid of any problems you see. This is called the mirror effect. And I see that my arm here is a little bit too far, so because I'm using digital, I can just use the lasso to move things over. But if you're using a piece of paper, you just erase. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity here to make it not quite so dark. And I'm going to make another layer. Again, if you're using just a piece of paper, hopefully your sketch lines are already fairly light, so you wouldn't have to take another sheet of paper or use a light table. You can, though. There's always lots of things you can do. Alright, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing better. I'm going to switch colors so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. I'm going to use some blue now. And now I'm just going to sketch the basic shape of the face a little bit more definitive. I'm going to draw her ears in there. And again, I'm kind of still doing basic shapes. I'm going to thin out her neck a little bit. And some of what I'm doing is just based on experience. If you're not feeling very confident about where the line should be and how the body is shaped, that's when you want to use reference. Find a magazine picture, take pictures of yourself or your friends in a pose. I'm going to erase this because that's still a little bit too thick. She's very broad, so we're going to thin her out some. And right now I'm mostly just going around making an outline around the sketch I've already done. And again, since we're still in the initial phase of the sketch, you'd want to sketch a little bit darker than you did before, but a little bit still light, because you still want to be able to make changes easily if you're using a piece of paper. Make her fingers a little bit thinner there. I'm going to zoom out here so we can see the whole thing again. I think I'm going to make her torso a little bit longer than I had before. And still, right now I'm not worried about the lines being perfect. This is just the sketch. I'm not going to ink this anyway, but I will make the lines a little bit more final. Come a little bit cleaner. And again, kind of making the fishtail shape here. Fishtails have lots of different shapes. Some people like to make them kind of frilly. You know, not make it totally like the little Disney mermaid. I'm going to work on her hairline up here. And see, this is why I put that cross there. That's to help me figure out where her eyes need to be. I'm going to make them kind of small. I don't want her to be too anime-ish this time. Some eyebrows. Just a little bit of a nose. Just a little bit of a smile. Again, this is still fairly light, so changes can still be made. Thin out her chin a little bit. And this is why I really love doing digital, because you can make corrections on the fly. I'm going to move her head over just a little bit. There we go. Right, and then we can add in some of her hair. We want to make sure her hairline is, you know, a good distance from the top of her eyebrows. Now, something you want to consider when you're drawing the hair is how wet it is. When hair is really wet, it's very heavy, and so it won't have a lot of spring to it. We're going to say her hair is somewhat dry here, so it's a little bit more flowing since she's above the water. And we're going to have her hair come up over her chest. And we'll put a little hint for chest there. Make her throat a little thinner again. And we'll move her hair all the way over here. Again, we're going to block in the rock she's sitting on. Put a little line for where the water line is. Put some waves in the background. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of our very first layer. And as you can see, we've mostly got our mermaid the way we like it, but there's still some things that could be fixed. So I'm going to flip it over again. And again, that's when you can use like tracing paper if you're using a real piece of paper. And I'm going to take down the opacity some more. I'm going to go back in with the red again, just because it's easier to see. And I'm going to fix up some of my lines so they're not quite so sketchy. Make the opacity a little lower so it's easier to see the red again. And since I'm not going to ink this, I just want to make the lines a little bit more defined here and there so they're not quite so messy. Make her eyes a little bit more defined. And the shapes of eyes can kind of vary, so that's something you just want to study in real life people is, you know, the shapes of their eyes, the shapes of the eyebrows. I think I'm going to move her nose a little bit higher up. It's a little low. So I'm just going to take the lasso here, move it over just a little bit higher. I think I'm going to have to move her lips up a little bit too. Again, that's the magic of using digital. It makes changing things so much easier. I'm using a Wacom Intuos 5. Wacom has changed the names of their tablets, so it's the Intuos 5 is now the Intuos Pro. If you decide you're going to get some sort of tablet, I highly recommend the Pro. The bamboo versions are nice, but they don't quite have the same level of sensitivity. And you may find that it's a little bit harder to control the stylus and getting it to do what you want it to on the screen. And again, I'm just coming over, retracing some of what we've done, editing as I see the need. Get her ears back in there. And as usual, if you guys have suggestions of other tutorials you'd like to see, please do not hesitate to contact me. You can email me at cybercatgraphics at Yahoo, or you can leave me a message on DeviantArt or here on YouTube. Just search for Cybercat Graphics and you will find me. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so we can see her hairline a little bit better. Don't want it quite so poofy. And we're going to bring in the hairline a little bit closer to the neck. And I usually like to give my mermaids some sort of accessories and jewelry. And move the hairline over here again too. Give it a little bit of a curve. Again, give a little bit of hint of her chest over here. But we want to make sure she has plenty of modesty. And I'm going to thin out her shoulder a little bit here. Make sure it's nice and rounded. I'm going to smooth out my angles here so they're not quite so angular. And I'm going to give her a little arm bracelet here. And some beads. Maybe this was somebody's necklace once upon a time. Smooth out the shoulder again. Made it a little bit too broad in the original sketch. But generally that's what you want to do when you draw is, you know, don't ever commit yourself to how you first draw the line. It's okay to edit as you go along. If you notice something's too big or too small or not quite the right shape. Get her fingers in there. Right, now for her hips. I'm not going to put that little frill that they usually do in the Disney movies because I don't want her to be Ariel. Alrighty there. And I don't recommend doing like a ton of scales. I like just doing a little hint of them because otherwise it starts looking kind of overworked. And again, I'm kind of limited to time on these little videos. They can't be too long. And I'm going to give her kind of a frilled tail, sort of like the Japanese fighting fish. I think they have really pretty tails and fins. That's something else you may want to consider is, you know, does the mermaid have fins along her tail? Sometimes I like to do them up around the hips. So I think I'm going to put one right here. So that means there's going to be another one right about here. And I'm just going to make kind of U shapes here to emphasize where the scales start. And I'm only going to do a few. I'm going to kind of do them in a pattern where they kind of start growing from the center of each other. And you want to make them smaller as you go down towards the end of the tail. Alright, let's finish off her hair here. Get some wisps, because the wind is blowing and blowing her hair around a little bit. See a little bit from behind here. Draw a little bit of her belly button. I'm going to redraw that rock in there with a little bit more detail. And then the water line again. It's going to get a little bit over her tail there. And we'll add in a little bit of sketchiness in the background to show where the water's kind of still going on and on and on in the background. I'm going to turn off that background layer, take a look at our sketch, see if there's anything it needs. Okay, and we're pretty much done here. Of course, you can always flip it around a couple more times and see if there are any things that kind of bother you, or add in some more detail. I'm just doing kind of rough and quick here to give you the basic idea on what you can do. There's always more detail that can be added. Let's give her a necklace here. Why not? There we go. Make her a little bit more of an individual instead of quite so generic. Let's give her another bracelet. Jewelry is fun. A little bit more scales on the side here. And a bit more muscle definition on the arm. A bit more detail on the hair. There we go. And there you have a mermaid. Let me zoom back in there so you can see it. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And again, if you guys have any questions or suggestions for future tutorials you'd like to see, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to help you out and do more tutorials. And until next time, have a great day. Bye!